Okay, we're on the north side of the house. We're on the west side of the fence. We're going around the house counterclockwise. We've got brick. We've got post-tension cable slab foundation. Now, there's a couple different types of post-tension cable I hear, but you know, just continuous slab on grade. That's that's enough according to the Texas Real Estate Commission. But I like to let you know that it's at least a post-tension cable slab. It's a lot stronger than a conventional rebar. Handles a lot more abuse. That's why they've become so prevalent in this part of the country, because we're on expansive clay soil. One thing I don't inspect is power screens. If I can find a remote control around here somewhere, I'll try to work it, just because I'm a curious soul. But this patio covers, these ceramic patio covers, there's nothing wrong with these. It's very attractive. I like it, but it's going to be slick when it's wet. So if you're out here playing grab ass, well, while it's wet, it can be slippery. I'm just letting you know that our windows are double pane vinyl frame. Okay. We have in-use covers. That's a good thing. Double doors right in there. I am going to assume, okay, when you come out into a garage, when you come out onto a patio, when you come outside, your ceiling fans are supposed to be rated for exterior use. And I cannot make a positive determination about that, so I'm just assuming that that's what we have. Over here, we've got weep holes, and those are good things. That would be a deficiency if you did not have those. So we got weep holes here and weep holes here. This brick is porous. This home could burn down, okay, and you could reuse the brick. Okay, so brick's a very good building material, but a characteristic of it is that it's porous. I can see down in here in these weep holes, they've added some little wire mesh to keep the bugs and critters out, and that's a good thing. Okay, they didn't seal them up. You're not supposed to seal them up. We've got a gas pipe over here, and our brick is disturbed around this. So we either had a problem with this gas pipe, but it's also just as likely, or maybe even more probable, that was added after the fact, and so they had to knock out a brick or two to get the gas piping going. So our grading and drainage looks like it's pretty good, but our rain gutters, downspouts, do not divert water far enough away. And our sprinkler heads, that's pretty close. We'll talk about those if the time arises. We don't have to talk about them yet. We might not have to. This is a dilemma that we've got, and we're going to find this when we go into the water section of the report. Okay? This, and I appreciate that you came off, you little rubber thing. Well, see how fine those threads are? We used to have a vacuum breaker here, and that's what this was hooked up to. And when they ran off with the water hoses and stuff, maybe I'll find one in the garage. I found them in the attic. But unless I find a vacuum breaker to screw back on here, I cannot check the water pressure. This is the same in the front yard too, by the way. I'm familiar with that. Okay, so the water pressure, we're just going to have to guess about it. And yeah, I just turn it on, make sure the water's coming out. But I'd like to tell you the water pressure if I can. Rain gutters not discharging water far enough away from the structure. It's coming on out. So we're coming out here. We're going to see our light fixtures are different. So that makes me suspicious about the fan. I can't prove it one way or the next. But since our luminaries are different on this patio than the other patio, then the fan almost looks like it was an addition. And I don't know, I don't have any paperwork, I don't have any ratings, I don't know what to tell you about it. Weep holes, okay. Because weep holes are necessary, because brick is as efficient as it is, it's porous, and water goes right through it. Now most of the time, it's only going to be vapor barrier coming out of there. But if you have an event, I've seen water come out, I hope you don't, but it's happened. So, but that's what the weep holes are for, and that's why we have them over our fenestrations, because these metal lintels are holding the brickwork up, and we've disrupted the drainage plane, so then we had to install more weep holes, and that's the weep hole story right there. Moving on along. A tree shouldn't be any closer to a structure than 25 feet, especially a slab foundation. We want to keep a nice, we're in North Texas, we're on expansive clay soil. We want to keep a nice even amount of moisture in the ground around our foundation. Sometimes it's better, if it's dry, to let the whole thing dry up, because this soil expands and contracts about 3 inches. So if this corner was real dry because the tree took all its roots, then this corner could be 3 inches higher, and it's going to cause a lot of pressure on your foundation. Another thing, ironically, another thing is trees grow, okay, they move things, their roots move things. So the roots will come in there and they can move your foundation up. So the roots are moving it up while they're drinking the water down. It doesn't balance. It doesn't balance. I've never heard that the tree was engineered to help your foundation that way. I just haven't heard anything like that. But those are two effects of different trees operate differently, and I'm not a botanist. I mean, I really do think this is a potato tree. So you don't want me to start classifying trees. But as a general rule, this tree is too close to the house. Too close to the house. Okay, moving on along. And all these beautiful little sage bushes, man, I like these. I like these. And, they are, for the time being, as long as the wind's blowing this direction, they're not touching the house. But they need to be come in here and they need to be trimmed. In fact, one of them is like touching the house. We're doing a WDI, or wood destroying insect report. And yes, I will make note of this as a conducive condition. Other conducive conditions, if your fence is touching the house. Most of us want a fence. If the fence is touching the house, it's what I try to call it a conducive condition. Unlike these bushes, I'm going to call that a conducive condition by design. And then my client was asking me, he says, well, are you going to inspect the fence for termites? And I said, no. And he said, do it anyway. I said, okay, so we're good there. But with this edging here, we're trying to keep rabbits out. Beautiful little bunnies, okay, but just kind of walking around the perimeter. Why not? We're here. Okay, so we've got a little bit of wood rot along the bottom edges of the fence right here. This is bonus rounds. A little bit of wood rot right on along here. Wood into the ground, conducive to wood destroying insects for itself. The fence itself is conducive. This does not apply to the structure because it's 3 feet away. Okay. Now next to the structure, it's a different story. We got to look at it differently. But we're coming over here. We got all these bushes next to your fence. You're going to have them. You're not going to have them. The fence is supposed to last about 14 years. This fence looks like it's original to the structure. Still looks like it's got a lot of good life in it. I hope it lasts 30 years. I'm not putting it to, I'm not writing a death certificate on it, okay? But I am saying that the fence has some age, and that's another thing about termites. It's kind of interesting. We're doing a termite report, right? This is almost a sacrificial anode. Termites are beneficial. They're in all the soils. We need them. They're part of the ecology. Okay, their job is to take dead wood and convert it into fresh soil. The problem is our houses are made out of dead wood. We don't want termites in our house. But a termite in your fence over here is not going to have that much meaning to you. Do you want termites eating up your fence? No, I've treated my fence because termites were eating it. Okay, we don't want that. But that's a separate problem than your house. So you could leave these untreated. They have no reason to come over here. Just let them eat your fence. I don't recommend that, but just let them eat your fence. And then you know that they're over here being fed. They don't have to stray away from home. Moving on along, and we're still movers. Rain gutters do not discharge water far enough away. Rain gutters do not discharge water far enough away. See this pipe right here? The reason why I'm going to talk about this pipe right now is because I'll probably forget about it when I'm talking about your condensing unit, okay? But this pipe right here is a secondary drain pipe for your air conditioning system, for your evaporator coil. So if your primary gets clogged, okay, an analogy. If your primary gets clogged, it's like you have a flat tire. And water starts coming out of here. It's like you're driving around on that little donut tire looking all stupid and stuff. So when you see water coming out of here, you know that you have a problem with your air conditioning system. You don't want to be driving around town with that donut tire looking stupid and stuff. And so you're going to get the air conditioning tech to come out and blow out the lines and service your system and do all the things that needs to be done. It's just a part of the joys of home ownership. Okay. This speaks to the roof. The roof is about 4 years old. I understand it was replaced because of a storm. I can see some of the coils on the condensing unit were damaged by hail. And I don't know how to speak to that. It wasn't enough that it warranted a claim. It was denied, or it was just ignored when the roof covering, or I don't even know that it was insurance. I'm told that the roof was replaced as a result of a storm, but I don't know what all the business of that, action was. Coming on along, again, in case I forget, I probably won't, but our grounding rod is supposed to be an 8-foot grounding rod. It's supposed to be buried 8 feet. It's not supposed to be buried 7 foot 6 inches. It's not supposed to be buried 7 foot 5 inches or 7 foot 4 inches or whatever inches that is. It's supposed to be buried into the ground. Now you probably have enough resistance. It's probably, in fact, mine's up like this. I had to get a permit because I had my line replaced. And I had to have a permit. And the building inspector, actually my electrician, put an ohm meter on it to demonstrate to the building inspector that it was doing what it needed to do. And so my grounding rod got to stand up like this grounding rod. I wasn't here when that happened. All I know is that's not buried far enough. Okay. Coming on along, this is the same thing with your AT&T. I don't inspect this stuff, but the weed whackers have gotten a hold of that. That's your communications. If you're working at home and water's getting in on your lines like that, and they probably go in the ground after they get so far. But they're still exposed. They're still exposed to the UV rays of the sun. They're still exposed to little rabbits wanting to chew on it because the ozone's going through it. So they're still susceptible to damage. Even if it's not water damage in the ground, they're susceptible to damage above ground. This is your lawn sprinkler system, and it's the same thing. There's all our control wires right there. I know they go in the ground, okay? So I know that water's not going to hurt them too much. I also know that they're fading. Why are they fading? Because the insulation's breaking down on them. Why is the insulation breaking down on them? Because they're exposed to the sun. Okay. And again, the fine lines. I might not be able to do a water pressure test. Unless I find a spigot in here, and it doesn't look like I'm going to do that. But the garage is part of the exterior. Just ask Crime Watch. And so I'm going to speak to this just a little bit. These cracks are typical cracks. And you are not going to have crack envy from your neighbors. I'm not saying that cracks are great. I'm not saying that they're desirable. I'm just saying that it's an unfortunate, byproduct of the construction. So are they more narrow towards the perimeter than the middle? Well, that could mean that we've got some heaving. But usually, as a general term, as one of the things that I'm looking at when I'm trying to make a decision about flat work, if they get more narrow, I relax a little bit. That's not something to worry about. If they got wider at the perimeter, there's no discussion. Could it be heaving? Could it be this? Could it be that? Okay? So they're more narrow. All right? Are they wider than a 32nd of an inch? No, they're not wider than a 32nd of an inch. Are they wider than 32nd of an inch in more than one location? They're not wider than a 32nd of an inch in any location. So that's a good thing, okay? So far we're passing our criteria. And then we go down to, is it in a plane, okay? You hear my shoe bumping on it crashes over that? I don't hear it. I don't hear my shoe bumping at all. I don't feel it either, okay? These cracks are in plane. So these cracks are typical. And like I said, there's really, you could seal the floor to make it prettier or something like that. You can do that. I'm not telling you to ignore it. In fact, you might want to monitor it. That's the answer I'm supposed to have. Is I noticed some cracking. You may want to monitor it. And there's different ways. So they sell these little stainless steel rulers that you screw into it, and, like for commercial applications. But at home, you just might want to put a ruler down on this spot or make a mark, and then you can always come back and compare it. But these are typical, and like I said, your neighbors are not going, you're not going to be the envy of the neighborhood because you've got some special cracks or anything. In fact, some of them may have fewer cracks, some of them may have more cracks, but everybody's going to have some cracks. Coming on along, we've got our sealant right in here in our backer rod or our expansion joint. That's okay. Okay. And now this is kind of interesting. This is about the only movement I've seen on the house. And, the garage is the exterior. Didn't I just say that? Okay, but we got right here on our casement, right here we got just a little bit of movement right there. And so far, that's all I've seen. Now we're going to go back to wood destroying insects and termites. All these bushes need to come off. They need to come back. I get it, you can kind of hide in here and enjoy a nice, IPA and a Maduro cigar and just enjoy life, but in the meantime, no. These bushes, Okay, carpenter ants use these as a bridge. Termites are blind. Okay, and so, but they get around with pheromones. They're not going to have any problem with these bushes. They're sensitive to temperature. They have to have the right temperatures. So they're little thermostats. So they feel all these thermostats and they don't feel the sun. And they're little blind boogers. They know that they can hide in here. They know that you can't see them. They have evolved. They have evolved to a higher level. And they know that that's a safe place for them to come into your house. Okay. And then right here, where do termites live? In the ground. Oh, what do they eat? Dead wood. Oh, what's wood mulch? Dead wood on the ground next to your house. It's called a clue. It's called a clue. Same thing here and here and here. Plus, the rain gutter does not discharge water far enough away. We got bushes next to the house, and we got wood mulch next to the house. You call me in a couple of years and say, "Hey, bud, I got some termites in my house." I don't know, guys, where all the bushes were next to your house, and the wood mulch was next to it, right there, where the water was draining right on top of it, with those things. You say, "Yeah, that's right. How did you know?" I say, "I know." I know. What I'm gonna do is I'm coming back with a shovel, a little nose-bill shovel, because I want to open up some of these water irrigation covers, peek around a little bit, but I'll also use it to pry it back and get a better look at your foundation right in here. I'm looking for cracks and still, man, I'm not seeing any movement. The only movement I'm seeing is right over there. That's what I'm seeing. I'm also seeing that your screens are not in very good shape. They're kind of worn. They're kind of like an old suit. It's kind of shiny in the seat. You know, you didn't spend too much time at the desk. Okay, or at the pew, wherever you sit with your shiny suit. You see that? And that would have been hail damage too. I mean, that could have been, you know, and like your air conditioning unit, condensing unit. I don't know how that was addressed, or if it was addressed, or I don't know what all the particulars are about that. But we do have a damaged screen, and I don't know if it was supposed to have been replaced, or I don't know. I'm not an insurance agent. The seat of my pants is not shiny. Okay. Okay, moving on along. There we go. There's that wood mulch. There's those bushes. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Now, here's another thing. See how smooth that is, like a cake frosting? That's called a parge coat. Okay, and a parge coat, and we don't have any over here, but we have some at the front. All right? And a parge coat, like I said, is a cake frosting. Just because the cake frosting is cracked doesn't mean the cake is cracked. Just because the parge coat is cracked doesn't mean the foundation is cracked. And just because the parge coat is not cracked doesn't mean that the foundation is not cracked. And the parge coat moves at different rates than the actual foundation, because we got just a little skim coat there, and then we got the big boy concrete over here. So they move at different rates, which creates voids between the parge coat and the foundation, which termites can use to take advantage of to come into your house undetected. And the Texas Structural Pest Control Board, the Texas Department of Agriculture, requires that I call the parge coat conducive to wood-destroying insects. And so there we go. So there we got that. We got just a little bit of movement right in here. This is pretty much typical. There's our gas piping. I just want to call it to your attention that I do not see electrical bonding on the gas piping. I don't know of a code that requires electrical bonding. I'm supposed to determine where the electrical bonding might be. And if I'm not seeing it here, if you have it, is most likely that would be at the furnace. Okay, that little wire at the furnace, that's going to bond all the gas pipe to the house. And yeah, man, I don't explain them. I just tell them. Okay, this little wire right here, this is a tracer wire. And that has nothing to do with electricity or anything. That's for the gas company. So when they need to come out here and dig up your gas piping, they can hook a machine onto that, and then they will detect where the gas piping is. So that's just a convenience for future maintenance and repairs. But that has nothing to do with form or function or you or what.